I'm horror author Paul Edwards. Tonight I'm watching Mysterious Dr. Satan from 1940. Mysterious Dr. Satan was a movie serial made by Republic Studios during the peak of movie serial popularity. And it has all the trappings and tropes of a movie serial. Plenty of fist fights, plenty of chase scenes, stunt work galore, cliffhanger endings to each chapter. And about the only thing that it lacks is the hero it was originally written for, because originally this was supposed to be a Superman story. This was written to be a Superman movie serial. And of course, the character of Superman had been introduced to the public just a couple of years before this was made. Well, it turned out that they had legal problems using the character of Superman. So they rewrote this script to make it just a generic action hero. And he didn't have any superpowers. He was a regular guy who, when he had to spring into action, he would put this ski mask over his head and call himself the Copperhead. And, he had no superpowers. He was pretty good in a fist fight, but he is an ordinary guy, no special abilities at all. And the fact that this serial was written to be a Superman story makes it interesting to watch, because you can see the moments where what would have been Clark Kent changes into Superman when no one is looking. Now it's just a guy taking the mask out of his suit pocket and putting it over his head. And, he's still wearing the same double-breasted suit he was wearing 5 minutes ago. And now nobody recognizes him. But granted, Clark Kent's disguise was not the greatest disguise either. So I guess we can let that slide. What I can't let slide is that they didn't even bother to change the name of the female lead. The female lead character is still Lois. It's just not Lois Lane. They changed her last name, but it's still Lois. So knowing this was written to be a Superman story and hearing that the female lead character and love interest is Lois, really sticks in your craw. Also, the male lead, the hero, is Bob Wayne. Suspiciously similar to Bruce Wayne. And of course, the character of Batman had just come out the year before this was produced. So watching now that Batman and Superman are such well-established characters, you're like, what are you doing? But at the time this came out, the influence that those characters had was something that the producers probably figured nobody would even notice. Now, the main character in this story, though, is really not so much the Copperhead or Lois, but the villain, Mysterious Dr. Satan. He is a gangster and racketeer, but he's also a mad scientist. And his master plan is to manufacture an army of robots that will serve him and do his bidding. For example, he sends a prototype robot to go and rob a bank, and this 1,000-pound armored monstrosity crashes into the bank and overpowers the guard and steals the money and leaves. And Dr. Satan doesn't have to risk his life or even the lives of his men, because it's all the machine doing the work. His master plan is to manufacture a whole bunch of these robots. And I suspect, I don't know this, but I suspect that what the filmmakers intended back when this was a Superman story was that they wanted to do a live action version of that Max Fleischer Superman cartoon, The Mechanical Monsters, where a mad scientist does devise an army of robots and sends them out on a crime spree. And Superman follows them back to their base and has to fight this army of robots all at once and smash them up. I have a feeling that's what they originally had in mind for this serial to have for its climax, would be that Superman would get to the lair of Dr. Satan, and there would be a whole bunch of these robots that he would have to duke it out with. But non-superpowered Bob Wayne, aka the Copperhead, was not able to do that, so they had to rework the story accordingly. One thing that I've noticed about this serial, it is among the best that Republic Studios ever did. One thing I notice about it is there's such a preponderance of fistfights in it. And the reason is that these movie serials were designed to be watched chapter by chapter from week to week. So each individual chapter had to have enough action in it to get you hooked if you hadn't seen the previous chapters, to make you want to come back and buy a ticket to the theater next week to see what would happen next. So every individual chapter in this has either a knockdown, drag-out fist fight, or sometimes more than one fist fight within one chapter, or a whole lot of stunt work. Parts of the story take place in factory settings because Dr. Satan is trying to manufacture these robots using certain materials. And the Copperhead goes to the factories and they film outdoors, filming the stuntmen climbing up and up endless amounts of scaffolding, and then, falling, running from this part of the rooftop to that, and so forth. There's a whole lot of stunt work that takes place that looks like this. And if you're sitting down watching the entire story from beginning to end, it can get to be a little repetitive because, oh, it's another fist fight. Oh, it's another chase. Oh, it's another fist fight. Oh, it's another chase. But that's not really the filmmaker's fault. It's our fault for not watching them the way they were designed to be watched. We're just watching them, binging them over the span of a couple of hours. And that's not the way that they were designed to be seen. Other than that repetitiveness, this really is one of the best movie serials. They don't have a bunch of filler, which some serials are guilty of. They don't have any chapters devoted to flashbacks of what's happened so far. It's just straight storytelling. And the Copperhead is no Superman, but he's a serviceable hero, and his fights are certainly memorable. He has an odd way of fighting where if the bad guy is on the other side of the room, the Copperhead will run towards him and just leap, both feet off the air and just leap bodily on top of the guy and start pounding on him. And of course, Superman could do that because he's Superman, but an ordinary human being who wants to fight should have at least one foot on the ground at all times so that, you have some leverage. If you jump and are airborne, you've lost all of the leverage that you had. So, okay. But if that's your biggest question about this movie serial, you're not paying attention because there was a lot more to it. There is one thing I want to point out about Dr. Satan, though. He had a better invention than the robots all along, and he didn't even realize it. Dr. Satan watches the activities of his enemies and the activities of his own men on a sort of a television machine that gives him an image from within whatever room it is that he wants to watch, as if there were a camera there, even though there's no camera there. It's like a detached, neutral view, and basically what they're doing is just showing us, the audience, film footage of whatever they filmed in the other room. But it seems to me that would be a better invention than an army of robots. You could get way, way more mileage out of an invention that lets you see into any room and see and hear what people are doing anywhere in the city without any physical equipment having to be in the room and without anybody having any way to trace it back to you. You could get away with way more stuff with that invention, which he already had and was using all the time, than this, harebrained scheme to whip up an army of robot monsters. But don't tell Dr. Satan that, because if he realizes the real power he has, then we're all in big trouble. Listen, if you enjoy classic monsters and vintage horror, you should check out my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. I'm self-published on Amazon. I've written a series of novels that take place in a haunted forest, Mourner's Woods. Each novel brings a completely new cast of characters into this forbidden wilderness to fight a new supernatural threat. The one thing they all have in common is the location. They don't have characters in common or plot lines in common. They have the location in common. So my franchise works a little differently than a lot of others. I'll drop a link to my books in the description for this video. Thanks for letting me talk to you some about Mysterious Dr. Satan. I'll see you in Warner's Woods.